I'm very excited to welcome Brett Lee. Brett Lee is the head of marketing at Tonkia, an enterprise no-code process orchestration platform. He has over a decade of experience in marketing, product, and sales at B2B companies like Hewlett Packard, Periscope Data, and Perfecto Mobile. He has spent his career at the intersection of no-code and automation, particularly interested in how these technologies can be smartly leveraged to solve complex business problems. Brett, it's a real pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time today to share your expertise with our global audience.
Thank you, Joe. It's very nice to be here and happy to be speaking with everyone. Great. So let me go ahead and get started. So why are we here? Why does efficiency and adaptability matter? And I'm a big subscriber of Simon Sinek's Start with the Why. So let me start here on this topic. First, well, for businesses, efficiency and adaptability are critical. I don't know if you guys know a stat, but 2 in every 5 Fortune 500 companies are actually no longer going to be around in 10 years. The pace of change today is faster than ever before. And we're facing constant global disruptions, COVID being the latest prime example of a global disruption. The companies that are set up to adapt quickly to the changing conditions are going to be much better situated to survive and thrive in the long run. Recently, we worked with a company in the consumer travel space, and you can imagine overnight their entire business changed. One area where they faced a lot of stress was in the customer support process. All the people that had tickets booked for flights all of a sudden had to call in and change or cancel their tickets. And that created a wave of demand just seemingly overnight in their customer support department. And so the ability for them to adapt to those changing conditions while facing stress from the business perspective, so you had to gain efficiency, was critical to their survival. Now, this is also important to people. This is not just about business outcomes, right? People, I don't know if you know, only spend 2.8 hours a day on high value work today. And if you think about efficiency, that is insanely low. You wish that people had much more time to spend on the things that actually impacted the business rather than chasing data in different computer systems or trying to figure out what the right process is to follow, right? And from an adaptability standpoint, overnight, people had to go and move to start working from home in the face of COVID. And businesses that were better set up to enable people, to empower people to adapt, would also thrive in the long run. So with that said, achieving adaptability is incredibly hard. I'm sure all of you process experts know that change management is probably one of the hardest things to do. And if you think about why, you look across the people, the processes, and the systems that you have in your organization, things are incredibly complicated, right? A lot of times, sometimes the process isn't even well defined. So how can you change it if you don't know what the process is? You have these systems that have been around for years and years and touch hundreds, if not thousands of people. And so seemingly changing those systems overnight is also incredibly hard. And finally, people are sometimes the hardest things to change. People are stuck in their behavior. They like what they like. You need to train people to learn new behavior or to adopt new systems. And that is a monumental task in many cases. Additionally, gaining efficiency is quite complicated. I took a simple SIPOC example of simply sending an invoice. You think that should be easy. Take an invoice, send it out to email. But if you break down all the different components that make up what sending an invoice entails, you can see that it touches multiple people. It touches multiple different pieces of technology and systems and tools. And it's a process that is very, very convoluted and actually incredibly complex, even for something as simple as sending an invoice. So finding the areas where you can actually gain efficiency in these processes, in these systems, in these people is also incredibly complicated. Now, one of the things that holds companies back and holds process experts back are the technology options that are available today for you to actually improve the processes, to make people more efficient, to actually make your systems work better for you. And that's because technology options today are too rigid and inefficient. You really only have two options at a high level, right? And this goes back to your typical kind of buy versus build, decision point. Number one, you can deploy more apps, but most organizations have thousands of apps already. And if I need to add a new application, that only adds to complexity, and it adds to people having to learn yet another system to be able to actually work. And deploying apps is also very rigid. Once you have it, it's very difficult to actually change the capabilities of that system. And so as your processes shift, as your business changes, that means you have to go back and maybe take out that app and buy a new one, right? Or write a ton of custom scripts to actually change the functionality that comes out of the box of that initial application. And that leads me to the second option. You can build custom solutions. Well, how many developers do you really have access to, right? Every company needs more developers. They need more technical resources. In many cases, that becomes the bottleneck. And building custom solutions is not easy. It takes 6, 9, 12 months. And you have to you have to continue to maintain and update that system, again, as your business changes. So it creates a lot of inefficiency in the organization. Now, this all hinders your ability as process experts, as business experts, as technology experts, to be able to adapt and optimize your operations in your business. We recently did a survey to a national audience of business operations experts, and this included people both from the business side as well as the IT side. And 86% of respondents said that their plans get at least occasionally delayed because of a lack of technical resources. And so this is one of the main causes that prevents businesses and prevents process experts as yourself from moving as quickly as you want to, or adapting as quickly as you want to. Now, one of the rising sets of technology in the enterprise today is no-code or low-code automation. And the promise is pretty evident. If more people could actually create software, could actually build software, you allow more flexibility and you allow more agility because you're less dependent on a core group of developers or a core organization of developers to solve process challenges. But because it's relatively new, it hasn't really entered the mainstream of the enterprise, tech stack today. And so what I want to do is to go through some of the nuances of what automation is and what it actually means to deliver automation properly. Now, there's actually one poll I would like to send out right now. And maybe Joseph, if you're here, I'm not actually sure how to do this.
Yeah, no, I will do that for you.
Okay.
Brad.
Can you send out the poll about no code in the next 3 to 5 years? I'm curious. So one question I wanted to ask the audience is, how many of you believe that no code or low code is going to be kind of a game changer for enterprise over the next 3 to 5 years? If you can tee that up and send it out, that'd be great.
We'll do that, Brad. Just so you know, there are 3 polls available. I believe organization has too many apps. I believe organization has enough access to development. And the third one that you're mentioning, no-code platforms are going to be critical for our organization within the next 3 to 5 years. I'm gonna launch that one right now.
Okay.
So for those of you in the audience, the poll is being launched, and it says agree or disagree. No-code platforms are going to be critical for our organization within the next 3 to 5 years. So please select one of these options, agree, disagree, or not sure. So click on one out of these 3 options, and I see the first few votes coming in. Go ahead and vote on one of these 3 options, and I'm gonna give you a moment here to do that. Very well. We have most of you already voting. I will give you another 10 seconds here to complete. And Brett, here we go. I'm closing the poll, and
Okay.
I'm gonna share the results with you all now, and I'll read that for you, Brett. 54% say that they agree, 4% say that they disagree, and about 41% say they're not sure.
Interesting. This is actually kind of what I expected. I think for many of you that have started looking at these solutions, you can understand the game-changing impact and potential, at least, that it has. And also, there's a lot of folks that are relatively new to the no-code, low-code concept, and or have some uncertainties about how this can actually apply in enterprises. How can you leverage no-code solutions to solve really complex business challenges? Can you actually trust non-developers, if you will, to actually build solutions that can last and that can scale and that can support the complex business requirements that an enterprise has? All those I've heard quite a bit, and so hopefully by the end of today I can change some of those unsures, or at least highlight a little bit about what no-code automation is and what some of the promises. And so that's where I wanted to go next. So to break down these two components, I introduced no code, but I also introduced this idea of automation, and that's where I want to start first. When you think about automation, what exactly is it, right? There's a lot of news and media and press talking about how automation is going to be replacing jobs and how robots are taking over the world, et cetera, et cetera. What I want to clarify for everyone here is that if you think about automation, at the end of the day, it's still software technology, at least when it comes to process automation, right? And if you compare that to what a business application is, in many cases, business applications are automating certain steps and processes within your business already, right? If you take a CRM, a customer relationship management system, there's a lot of tasks that system is doing behind the scenes, tracking opportunities, categorizing what a customer is. Once you update a field, having a few other fields automatically updated for you. In effect, that's automation. Now, it's just happening in the confines of a business application. And really, that's just a technology tool that you're using to make your business more efficient, make your people more efficient. But in many ways, automation is the same. If you look at process automation, right? It's about eliminating some of the mundane tasks that people have to do today, whether it's responding to an email, whether it's having to go to 4 or 5 different systems to toggle a field just because something changed. And in many cases, process automation is actually filling in for some of the limitations of business applications, right? You would wish that business application could automatically do some of the things that people have to do, but it can't because of technology limitations. And so in many cases, if you look at RPA, if you look at other things in the process automation space, there are things that are actually filling in some of the gaps of that technology, right? And making people a bit more efficient in that manner. Now, one of the other things I wanted to introduce to everyone is this idea of process orchestration, right? And to me, this is the layer above automation. If you think about automation as being tasks, orchestration is the choreography of those tasks. What do you do, when, how do you do it? What are the business logic and business rules that's in place in order for those tasks to be taken, when those tasks should be taken? And that is another great opportunity to introduce technology to help you manage and streamline many of the business processes that you have. And it achieves a lot of the same outcomes, by the way, when you think about delivering new business applications. It allows you to manage an entire end-to-end business process like customer relationship management or like the contract process. But the difference is it doesn't actually introduce another interface. It doesn't introduce another system, another URL, if you will, that people have to go to be able to get work done. But rather, you can think about it as taking information and bringing it to people, and taking actions and bringing it to people. And I'll show you later on in this presentation a little bit of more of what that actually looks like, what that means, but I wanted to introduce that concept to everyone here. Now, the other question is, okay, great, what is no code, right? Does it really mean that I don't have to write any code anymore in order to build software? Well, let me tell you, there is a spectrum, right? It's not code or no code. There isn't really a black and white distinction between the capabilities that you have here. It's really a sliding scale, and there's places for custom coding, right, where you have to build code from scratch and actually write new software. There actually is an in between, this idea of low code, which is there's certain components that have been abstracted from the custom code such that you can reuse it, but then add some more code if you need to extend the capabilities of the components that you built. And then finally, there is full no code, which, again, everything is based on these components that you're dragging and dropping in order to build software. And each of these different types of technologies is geared towards a particular segment of people. If you think about custom coding, of course, they're professional developers, right? Now, low code is also used in the context of professional developers. A lot of IT organizations are actually using low code technologies to accelerate their pace of development, because great, you can write code, but writing code takes time. If you can componentize a lot of the elements of code and reuse it more quickly, that's going to speed up how quickly you can deliver software, right? And then no code is really meant for business folks. Now, the other kind of misconception that a lot of people have is it's either one or the other. You have a platform that is only no code, or you have a platform that's only coding. And over time, what you'll see is technology starting to have a spectrum where ideally you have a handoff. Imagine you have developers, IT, building the components using code, using scripts to define certain business capabilities, and then handing that component off to the business for them to be able to use themselves in order to build out an end-to-end process. And so, that is one thing I think you'll see kind of evolve over time. Now, here's what we found on that question that I asked you a little bit earlier. 95% of enterprises in our survey indicated that they've either already invested in or are about to invest in a no-code, low-code platform. So this is a wave that is absolutely coming in the enterprise. More and more people are looking at it, and it's something that really is starting to take off in this space. But the question is, okay, great, you tell me this train is coming, but how can I actually use no-code automation? I want to make this practical for everyone here. So I'm going to break this down into 4 key steps. Number 1, you want to identify the areas for automation or orchestration. And notice that this is not just about no code. All right, this is also about being able to find gaps in your processes, gaps in your systems that you can leverage automation orchestration to drive more of. And rather, a lot of companies today are looking at no code kind of as a side project. Let me find some low-hanging fruit, some non-critical processes to actually use this technology on. And I think that's the wrong approach. You actually want to use no code to accentuate the people who are building out these processes, people that have process excellence folks that are on this in this conference. And that is where the opportunity for this is. Now, you can ask the question, simple question, is there a lot of manual work? And that's typically, for a lot of organizations looking at automation, the first question they ask. But the other question they should be asking about is, well, this is an alternative to an application. Do you really need an app? Do I need a new interface? Or am I looking at an app because that's the only way I can solve a process challenge today, right? Is change management going to be an issue? Are people liking to use email or already using other systems? And I actually want to just keep them there. Well, this is a better place for automation rather than introducing a new application. Does the process involve multiple systems? Is there human interaction? Is there multiple functions involved? These are all places and all questions that you can start to ask to find opportunities for automation and orchestration. And as an aside, I know Joseph mentioned process mining next week. And I think that is absolutely one area where you can leverage process mining tools to figure out where opportunities are to improve your processes within your infrastructure. Number 2 is to create a collaborative IT and business relationship. And I know for many of you, this is sometimes already there, but other times easier said than done, right? Because IT and business have dynamically different needs, right? On the business side, you're trying to achieve outcomes. You need more flexibility. You want to move faster. On the IT side, you're looking to ensure security and compliance and being able to support and scale how you support the entire organization. Now, there's expertise though on both these sides that you absolutely have to have in order to successfully improve your processes and look at all three components of people, process, and systems that I talked about, right? On the business side, you have process knowledge, you understand the user needs. On the IT side, you have technical knowledge and dev resources. Finding a way where you combine those two things together, where for IT, you can actually empower the business with capabilities on the technical side, and business, you can take the process knowledge and actually deploy it without having to translate it back to IT. That is going to make this entire collaborative relationship work much better. So how do you actually then make this collaboration easier? Well, what it comes down to is componentizing and thinking about, like Lego blocks, how can you break apart your entire technical stack into specific building blocks that, again, going back to what I shared with you about the spectrum between no code, low code, and custom code, into these reusable components that you can piece together in order to deliver. And I'll, again, explain a little bit more in a moment and break this down for you, what this actually looks like. And then finally, sorry, there's a typo here, but continue to improve. It's about iteration. And this is where you achieve the adaptability that you have over time. Is if you can break apart, create this collaborative environment, break apart the capabilities into subcomponents, and then start to improve incrementally over time on each of these components, that's where you start to achieve big outcomes in the long run. So let me break down in more practicality what this actually looks like for an organization. And this is a model that you can deploy. Now, Tonkean as a platform helps you deploy this immediately, but you can do this even by yourself. The ability, again, to achieve that componentization, achieve that collaboration between IT and the business, and then be able to iterate and quickly scale your capabilities. So on the left, what you see here is kind of the IT side, if you will, right? You have your existing technology stack, your various packaged applications, custom built applications, collaboration platforms, which increasingly is where people spend their time, right? In email and Slack and Teams and GChat, as well as your databases. And what you first want to do is to connect those systems. For a lot of companies that already have APIs, it's easier, right? But you can also use things like robotic process automation to tap into the capabilities of your systems. What you want to do is to build what I call enterprise components, what we call enterprise components, right? Which are a packaging of different capabilities in your technical architecture. So, for example, this could be something like I want to update an opportunity, right? And that can be a Salesforce, a CRM a component, but then also maybe including an alert into something like a Teams to say that that opportunity has been updated or has been created, right? That can be a package capability that you capture and you start to reuse. And any combination of that you can build into these building blocks of enterprise components. Now, then what you want to do is on the other side, create a no-code experience. And there's a number of different no-code tools that allows you to do this, but Tonkean is one of them, to take those enterprise components that you've built and then be able to reuse it, be able to use a no-code interface for the business to string them together into an end-to-end process that actually improves your business operations. And this now you hand to the various departments within your organization, marketing, sales, support, legal, finance, engineering, and IT, to be able to empower them to build their own solutions. And the beauty of this is now that you have a standard model, it's much easier to build the custom processes that satisfy your unique requirements with business input, right? If you think about something like the contract process, right, that touches legal and sales and finance and other and HR. And having a system that captures your contract process it's not the easiest way to actually solve that problem, right? Because now you need 4 different departments to log into a single system in order to interact with that process. Much better would be taking the core capabilities of that contract management system and then giving it to sales in the form of updates to their CRM, giving it to legal in whatever system they're using, giving it to the HR portal, and actually pushing capabilities into that. That makes things much easier for the organization. So one story I wanted to tell is Google, and they're using Tonkean to empower no-code automation for specifically their legal operations department. They actually standardized on Tonkean for this. What they were looking to achieve when they started their no-code journey is they wanted to improve flexibility and agility. In many cases, legal for most organizations were kind of an afterthought, unfortunately, for IT support. They're prioritizing revenue generating areas of the business, sales and marketing and other places as a priority for where they spend development resources. And legal a lot of times is kind of left to their own devices, if you will, to solve that. And they needed to reduce that reliance on IT and engineering. And so they leveraged no-code automation to improve a lot of the processes that they have. And automation was also uniquely beneficial for legal, because legal inherently in the nature of their work is interfacing with other areas of the business. They're interfacing with sales and with marketing and with HR and finance for a lot of the capabilities and their processes and their work. And so they could ask everybody to adopt a legal system, but who would want to do that, right? Instead, people would probably end up sending an email to a legal inbox to ask a question for that legal team. And so rather than do that, they wanted to actually be able to connect, to reduce that change management for their processes into the other systems, into the other tools of the communication platforms that people are using. And so they wanted a lot more flexibility there. And so that's all of the things that came into mind when adopting a no-code platform like Tonkean, is they wanted to improve these processes without requiring a lot of the change that normally occurs with implementing new technology. They're now able to drive a lot of things directly from email, and they see massive returns in savings, 1.6 million in savings per year because of productivity gains, reduced services that they were contracting out because they didn't have access to development, and also, by the way, not having to buy more apps. So a lot of savings on the license cost as well. So with that, I think we're actually a little bit out of time. I was going to show you some of this concept in action, but I think we can go maybe straight into the Q&A. And one of the things I wanted to mention, though, is at the end of the day, no-code automation immediately benefits you all on this call. The folks that are process-oriented, process experts, operational experts. You're able to actually now deliver on some of the things that you find when you map out a process, instead of having to rely on an external resource like a developer or somebody in IT to actually build that solution for you. This is something that you can now do yourself, and you can actually, with the right model, with the right support from IT, be able to now accelerate how quickly you can impact change in the organization. And so this is a very exciting area in technology, I think, for many of you on the process side. And I think it's absolutely something that organizations are trying to look into to start to democratize and expand the pie of who can actually deliver software. So with that, I am going to turn it back over to Jose for the Q&A.
Very well, Brett. Thank you very much. Excellent coverage here. We had several questions that have come up. I'm gonna ask you, Brett, to stop sharing your presentation. I'm gonna come back on with my camera, and for our audience, thank you for the questions that you have already submitted. I'm looking for the main themes that have emerged here, and I encourage you to continue to ask questions, because as long as we have Brett here for the next 10 minutes or so, take advantage of his expertise. So Brett, in no specific order, as you were explaining, and some of these items you have already addressed as part of your presentation, but a little bit of reinforcement here. I want to go back to one of the top questions that came up, and I will single out Francis Pugeda here, who asked, who mentioned, no code is too good to be true. That's his first statement. What are the limitations, Brett, and constraints of no code versus low code and custom coding?
Yeah.
And when should we say that no code is not the right solution? So a couple questions there. First one is maybe a reinforcement of those limitations, and and also where, is it too good to be true? And you have already made that point, but if you can emphasize a little bit about true no code applications, what do they look like? And then is there a time that you say, it's not the right solution for us?
Yeah, great question. So, and in many ways, it's about thinking about the spectrum, right? It's not one thing or the other. And I think I mentioned this before, but I want to just reemphasize that point. It's not no code or low code or pro code. It's everything. And if you can build an architecture that allows components to be written in code, to then be reused in a no code environment where you have some technical folks that then can accelerate how quickly they develop, but then they can in turn create maybe more components that abstract more technical knowledge into the no code environment that allows business to actually consume that on their own. That's the ideal setup, right? And so that's, of course, how Tonkin thinks about it, right? Taking enterprise components and handing it off to the business for them to self-serve. But that's also, you'll see a maturity of this in the market over time. I think today there is still kind of the separation. It's either no code or code, and I have platforms that are only no code. And you're absolutely right. You're going to run into barriers. There's limitations of what no code capabilities can do, right? A lot of no code platforms today are focused on a specific subset of capabilities. Maybe it's no code, but I can only do HR functions, or I can only do things that are related to field services, whatever that is, right? And I can build as many applications there as possible. But if I want to veer outside of it, if I need to build a connection to another part of the business, well, guess what? You're out of luck, and you have to write code now. So that is the limitations that you see today with no code platforms and no code environments and the concept itself. So the more you can think about it as a spectrum with ability to hand off between the various aspects of no code, low code, and pro code, that is where you remove a lot of those limitations and allow you to take advantage of the capabilities for the right group of people.
Very good, very good. The next question here is actually kind of a funny question because this is someone who has been in the industry for quite some time, and he says that every time I ask someone to explain simply to me what no code is, they start giving me examples with other enterprise applications, and it feels to me that there's nothing simple about it, and it's almost like I'm back in a computer science class and he's talking about subroutines in the old school subroutine design. So to your point, the question really is there something that comes to mind, kind of more of a business application that's more tangible? Because a lot of times when people ask questions about no code, the people answer with kind of on some IT application, and then it gets people who have business sense but don't have the IT specific knowledge get a little bit lost. Is there a good example of no code on a business intuitive application?
Yeah, so I can tell you some examples of deployments that we've done, for example, in legal and customer support and other places. If you think about legal, right, and I'll go back to Google, and this was actually the example that I ran out of time to kind of showcase legal intake as a process. And this is the ingredients of legal intake is appearing in every part of the business, but the concept is simple. I need to be able to take incoming requests for legal support from various parts of the business, whether it's a sales contract, whether it's an HR new employee agreement, whether it's a litigation, whether it's just a question. And I need to be able to collect them and then be able to, send off and triage them through legal. Now, you can build an application for this and you can buy an application for this, but guess what? That application requires some way of inputting that request. That's always going to be a form, right? And that form is now a new thing that people have to go learn. But guess what people do today in interfacing with legal? Well, they send emails. They send a legal inbox, right? An email saying, I need this. So what we've been able to do with Google, for example, is with a no-code environment, and the components, sometimes some we provide out of the box. There's others that their IT organization has to kind of define using code themselves, but that's for IT. That's not legal doing it. They then build it once, and then they have something like, well, interpret email. And behind the scenes, there's like natural language processing and all these complicated technology terms I'm not going to get into. But simply, I want to be able to read the subject, read the body, and understand what's going on with that email, right? Is it asking for an NDA, or is it asking for an SOW or something else? And that is a component that you drag in. Legal defines what the keywords are that they should be looking for from a business process standpoint. And then they define what happens afterwards, right? So these are all building blocks, and some of the follow-up material that we'll send you will have more examples from a Tonkean context, but that's the general concept, is like, how can I use essentially a Visio diagram or a process diagram and translate that into something that now can actually work, right? And that's the beauty of no code. So I hope that is another way to answer that question. But again, sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I don't have the ability to show pictures right now, but that's hopefully that makes a bit more sense.
Yeah, I think that color really helps, because especially when you start talking about a process diagram that you can use as the baseline for the no code application. I think that strikes a chord with a lot of the people in the audience here, so that's very good. I'm going to the next few questions and looking for the overall themes that are emerging from those questions. One of the questions is about it's more of a curiosity to a certain extent. This comes from William Fuller in Oregon, and he comments first: it sounds like the no code, low code environment is an evolution of the service-oriented architecture approach. And his question is, are we simply moving up the maturity curve, or this is some sort of new paradigm?
Yeah, no, that's actually not a bad way to think about it, because if you think about technology in general, there is just more and more abstractions being built. But the benefits of having abstractions built is that you have more access. More people can build software. To use kind of a consumer example, right? Websites used to be really hard to build 20 years ago, right? You needed to actually learn how to code and actually understand the architecture of a website in order to build it. Nowadays, if you need a wedding website, you go to Wix.com, you go to Squarespace, you go to any of these tools, and you can have a website out yourself easily. And that kind of concept is making its way into the enterprise scope. Now, with enterprises, you have a lot more complexity. There's security you have to worry about, and all of those things, which is why I talk about this kind of relationship between IT and the business, right? You have to have that relationship. But you're absolutely right. This is kind of the next wave of, I would say service-oriented architecture was one of the building blocks to enable this no-code revolution to actually happen. Without these building blocks of APIs, right, and a bunch of APIs that connect to the systems, you can never get to this point. But that was actually absolutely an active ingredient to this. Now, there's other things that help, right? Even machine learning. If you think about, I talked about natural language processing. Behind the scenes, it's technically very complicated to read unstructured data and be able to process it. But if you can now abstract that and use it in a business context, well, for the legal person, again, it's just, I want to interpret my email. Great. You add this block, build in the keywords, all of this technical capability are happening behind the scenes with this component, and I can just worry about what the outcome is of that process, right? And so there's a bunch of abstractions on a lot of foundational technology that's been built over the last 10, 20 years, SOA and machine learning and things like that. But that is being built and packaged together into a no-code environment to really now unlock the capabilities for process experts and operational experts.
Very good, Brett. Erica asks a question that this theme has come up with other questions as well, so I'm going to try to kind of summarize it. But people who have BPM platforms in place right now, or they may have something like kind of an advanced version of kind of automated, think of it of like you mentioned Visio before, like they have the process flows and diagrams, and they have some kind of automation built out as a business process management platform. If you bring what you're doing with Tonkean to that, how does that interact or build on what they have?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about the outcome of BPM, right? And BPM has, it's been around again for a long time. People have built a lot of process knowledge and things in there. Unfortunately, most BPMs, the way they kind of automate something is by building an app. Here's a new interface, right, that you have to force people to go to, where the business process behind the scenes is encapsulated, and then you follow the screens to execute on that business process, which is fine for some cases, in many cases, but there are times, like I explained, where people have other systems already. People have, are you leveraging the communication tools and delivering capabilities to the Teams environment, to Slack, to email, to other places, where instead of taking it out of that communication context to go to a system to do something, you can keep it in there and actually have things being done there. That's the extension that I'm talking about. And so in many ways, Tonkean is kind of collaborative with BPM. If you have the process already defined there are some things that you want to build an app for. There are other things that you actually want to take more of an automation approach or an orchestration approach to be kind of headless, where you don't have a new interface people are going to. So that's kind of the relationship between Tonkean and kind of a BPM platform. If that makes sense.
This is a great view. I think it helps quite a bit, and appreciate that. It's a good way of wrapping up because we're just out of time right now. Brett, what a gift to all of us to learn from an expert in the field, to kind of distill the language and the applications to all our global audience of excellence and innovation leaders and business transformation leaders who can really make good use of low code, no code applications. As you said, it's been around for some time, but I think there has been a real acceleration the last 5 years or so. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise with all of us today.
Thank you. Happy to be here, and hope to also be following up with a lot of you after today and keeping the conversation going. So thank you very much.
We'll do that. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Brett Lee, the head of marketing for Tonkean, and very excited to have him with us and distill some of this language and applications of low code and no code in our automation efforts. So we're going to wrap up this session, and at the top of the hour, we're going to have a great speaker coming directly from Germany. This is one of the senior leaders in project business for Siemens. Is going to talk about speeding up their proposal phase in project business by more than 300% by using an intelligent tender document screening approach. So how do we use artificial intelligence on a very important business process like proposals to speed up the process and create value? So a really interesting application of artificial intelligence in BPM, in business process management. And I'm very excited to welcome Torsten Gassen at the top of the hour. And I hope to see you back soon. Thank you.